and gentlemen, imagine yourself living in exile and not able to return to your motherland for 3 long decades. Not out of choice, but because you and your loved ones were hounded out. That's what every Kashmiri Hindu living across the globe is feeling for the last 32 years. They were killed, brutalized, and warned with dire consequences if they even considered the thought of returning back to the valley. Now there is a film that portrays the pain, the torture, and the ugly truth of what happened in Kashmir in the 1990s. We at times now have taken up this issue to give each one of these Kashmiri Hindus what they have been deprived of for the last 32 years. A voice to fight for what's rightfully theirs. It's not just this film. The truth has always been there, but unfortunately not seen by all, or perhaps some in the ecosystem ensured that people did not see the truth. Then, central governments in 1996, affidavit to the NHRC claimed that Hindus left the valley on their own accord in 1990s. Add to that the claim made by the son of one of the first genocide victims, who told Times Now that Rajiv Gandhi back then had said that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is not good, but Farooq is a friend and what can be done. In 2001, the National Human Rights Commission said that even though the government assured that the problems of Kashmiri Pandits would get priority, but it wasn't the case. That, ladies and gentlemen, points towards an attempt that was made to whitewash the genocide of hundreds of Kashmiris. And today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi too came out and slammed an ecosystem which was trying to scuttle the truth for all of these years. Listen in to what the Prime Minister said.
इन दिनों आपने देखा होगा कश्मीर फाइल फिल्म की चर्चा चल रही है और जो लोग हमेशा फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन के झंडे लेकर के घूमते हैं वो पूरी जमात बौखला गई है पिछले 5-6 दिन से और ये फिल्म का तथ्यों के आधार पर आर्ट के आधार पर उसकी विवेचना करने के बजाय उसको डिस्क्रेडिट करने के लिए बड़ा मुहिम चला है आपने देखा होगा एक पूरी इकोसिस्टम कोई सत्य उजागर करने का साहस करे उसको जो सत्य लगा उसने प्रस्तुत करने की कोशिश की लेकिन उस सत्य को न समझने की तैयारी न स्वीकारने की तैयारी है न ही दुनिया इसको देखे इसके लिए उनकी मंजूरी है जिस प्रकार का षड्यंत्र पिछले 5-6 दिन से चल रहा है मेरा विषय कोई फिल्म नहीं है मेरा विषय है कि जो सत्य है उसको सही स्वरूप में देश के सामने लाना देश की भलाई के लिए होता है
Ladies and gentlemen, these facts are all in public domain. But for your benefit and to refresh the memory of all those who seem to have conveniently forgotten this, I want to read out a few lines from an affidavit filed by the then Congress government in 1996. In this letter, the government told the Human Rights Panel that it was unacceptable to tag these migrants as internally displaced persons. Yes, you heard it right. They said the displacement of Kashmiri migrants from the valley was self-imposed. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? If those responsible don't even acknowledge the problem, how can we expect them to own up and, least of all, deliver justice? Now, the man in question amidst all of this is Farooq Abdullah, the then Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, the man who faces the charge of overseeing ethnic cleansing in the valley. Times Now confronted the patron of the National Conference. We demanded to know why he failed to give justice to the people he was governing. Listen in to his response and judge for yourself if it cuts any eyes.
जनाब वो गवर्नर थे उस वक्त सर अब वो जिंदा नहीं रहे नहीं तो वो बता देते इसे मैं चाहता हूँ कि इसकी इन्वेस्टिगेशन करनी चाहिए और इन्वेस्टिगेशन में फिल्म से दिखती है हर फिल्म अपनी अपनी बयान करते हैं ये नहीं ज़रूरी है कि हर फिल्म सच्ची है इसको अगर देखना है तो इसकी जांच करिए, ईमानदारी से इसको जांच करिए, देखिए कौन इसमें जिम्मेवार है, कैसे हुआ, क्यों हुआ.
And ladies and gentlemen, the legitimate question that begs an answer tonight: is digging for truth a conspiracy in this country? That's the question and the debate. Kashmir files disclosure. That's the debate coming up on the other side.
You're watching the News Hour first. Debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And joining me on the News Hour tonight, Shehzad Poonawala, national spokesperson of the BJP, Ashok Pandit, film director, Kashmiri activist, Kamruzaman Chaudhary, leader of the Congress party, Dr. Suman Siraman, political analyst, Majid Haidri, political analyst. But my first question goes to my friend Dr. Anand Ranganathan. And Dr. Anand Ranganathan, before I get really to the meat of the Kashmiri Pandit issue, I just want to ask you a question. Why is there such a beeline to discredit the film? After all, it's a film. Why is the Congress party, first a tweet from the Kerala Congress deleted, then a tweet from UP Congress? Why is there such a scurrying activity to try and somehow point fingers at the film, the authenticity, and the fact that creative freedom in this case cannot be given? Is there really an ecosystem at work to discredit the film or the truth, or just artistic freedom?
Good evening, Navika. No, as I have said it before, the only unsolved issue now left in Kashmir is that the Kashmiri Hindus, 7 lakh of them, haven't been brought home. Can there be reconciliation without remembrance? Crime without comeuppance? Can there be death without deliverance? Can there be justice without Nuremberg? But before I come to the thrust of my thesis, because the question you asked was about the Prime Minister's little speech where he talked about the freedom of speech and expression and the ecosystem, there is no doubt that the Congress is guilty. There are so many other guilty parties as well responsible for this genocide and exodus. But the fact of the matter is, when we are talking just of the films, it is very high and mighty of the Congress to talk about freedom of expression, because this is where, our history books don't tell us the truth. So here is the list of the films and plays banned under the Congress. Congress banned the film Nastik, banned Ritvik Ghatak's Amar Lenin, charged Utpal Dutt with sedition for Duswapner Nagri, jailed him for 7 months for Kalol, filed a police complaint against Netflix for referring to Rajiv Gandhi as Fattu. Film Gandu was banned Shyam Benegal's Nishant, banned film No Fire Zone, Ashwin Kumar's Inshallah Football was banned Amol Palekar's Vasankan, banned the film Jharna, banned Vijay Tendulkar's Gidade, banned Jugnu, banned Amol Palekar's Thang, banned Shankharam Binder, banned Pratap Sharma's A Touch of Brightness, banned Kiran Nagarkar's Bedtime Story, censored, refused to broadcast Shashi Kapoor's iconic New Delhi Times, demanded a ban on Padmavati, banned 2 songs from Fir Subah Hogi, attacked Utpal Dutt's play Nightmare City with bombs, deleted 1 entire song by the legend Pradeep, banned Balraj Sahni's Jadoo Ki Kursi, banned 4th part of Utpal Dutt's Insurgent Theatre, banned Ganga Jamna, banned Hariprada Master, banned IPTA, denied film certificate to Papilo Buddha, banned Prakash Jha Faces After the Storm, banned Samskara, demanded a ban on Parasakti, banned Nightingale Kamansaki, banned Nukula's Innocent of Muslims, arrested makers of Kabni Nadi Chevanapol, banned Bhool Na Jana, banned Johar's film Nasbandi, banned Anderson's Rajiv India, banned Louis Malle Phantom India, banned Jesus Christ Superstar, demanded a ban on film Dam Maro Dam, Nishabd, Kya Super Cool Hai Hum, banned MS Satyu's Garam Hawa, banned Me Nathuram Godse Bolta Hai, banned the book and the film 9 Hours to Rama, banned playwright A.M. Anthony's play The Sixth Sacred World Wound of Christ, Da Vinci Code was banned, demanded cuts in the film Rajniti, Arakshan was banned, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was banned, Amo was banned, Gokul Shankar was banned, Prithvatum was banned, Tango Charlie was banned, demanded a ban on Hey Ram, demanded a ban on Namu Sone Gamo, demanded a ban on film Arjun Reddy, demanded a ban on the song Bharat Mata Ki Jai from film Shanghai, demanded a ban on Rang De Basanti, passed only after minister said yes. Congress demanded a ban on film Hindu Sarkar, banned S.C. Goswami's film Runumi, banned The Last Temptation of Christ, banned Had Anhad, demanded a ban on Hey Ram Nathuram, Navika just 20 seconds, banned Satyajit Ray's Sikkim, Qaum De Heere on 84 genocide was banned. Sada Haq was banned. Hawaii on 84 genocide was banned. Neel Akshar Niche was banned. Banned the film Handi. Banned the film Kissa Kursi Ka. And these guys are now saying, that we uphold freedom of speech and expression. These guys were saying that the answer to a film is another film. Where is their film? Why do they want to ban this film?
Kamruzaman Chaudhary.
Who is calling for a ban on the Kashmir files? The question is not that. If the government of India
How
is
magnanimous
so
of you.
No.
Only discrediting. You only want to discredit it. You don't want a ban. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not discrediting anything. I'm not discrediting. Navika, let me come to the point straightforward. When you are building up opinions on the basis of a script written and played by one particular person, and you say that the Kashmir Files movie depicts the actual true stories of the Kashmiri Pandits of the valley, then why is the government of India not releasing the actual Kashmiri Files stored in its offices of the government? Why is it not releasing it? What have the government of India, that is the BJP government, doing over the last 8 years, to resettle the Kashmiri Pandits who have fled the valley? This does not suit their narrative. Navika, this was never a religious issue during those times. It was a insurgency, a militancy issue that led to the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. But long overdue, I repeat, long overdue, these people should have been resettled in the valley of Kashmir, rightfully which belonged to theirs. Now this ecosystem comes into place. While this film has been seeking justice for the Kashmiri Pandits, the movie has in fact brought out an old wound of the bloodied history into today's context, stereotyping the present day Kashmiri Muslims and degrading them.
Okay,
And,
stereotyping you're making statements. You're making statements that will make friends like Ashok Pandit, who are on this panel tonight, really reopen their wounds of the past. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, I urge you, if it was a sin to go through 1990 with your eyes shut, then it is a bigger sin today to inflict wounds on those who've tried to cover them with their own sense of survival. And Ashok Pandit, I want to ask you, which part of the film is not the depiction of the truth? I want to ask you, is it not a depiction of the truth what the film says? Yes, there might be some sort of dramatization for telling a story. But questions have been raised by Kamruzaman Chaudhary about the BJP's and last 8 years. Is this about 8 years or is this about 32 years? Is this about the BJP or is this about the fact that 7 lakh families had to leave that place and live like refugees in their own countries?
Navika, good evening. You see, I will request Mr. Chaudhary that if he cannot do anything for the Kashmiri Pandits, at least don't sprinkle salt on our pain. As far as Kashmiri Hindus are concerned, and as far as this film is concerned, let me be very clear and let me be on dot. Navika, not a single dialogue, not a single scene, not a single screenplay of the film, nor any performance is fiction, but nothing is lying. There is much more than what has happened. This is not even 25% of what happened actually in Kashmir to Kashmiri Hindus. And just 25% of what Vivek Agnihotri showed in his film has ripped them off, has made them uncomfortable, has made them restless. We are talking about NHRC, United Nations, human rights violations, group, human rights organizations. Navika, they were silent. We have knocked at their doors. They were silent for all these 34 years. You're talking about 19th January. Let me take you back to 1986 when there was a riots, when there was a persecution of Kashmiri Hindus committed by Mufti Muhammad Sayyid. There was an exodus. Kashmiri Hindus from Anantnag went away. They came back to Jammu and then they went back after some time. Farooq Abdullah is a person with the help or with the friendship of Benazir Bhutto. He outcasted, he removed Jagmohan from Kashmir. Now, Navika, we as Kashmiri Hindus, we were subjected to the major genocide and ethnic cleansing in Kashmir, and there is no two opinions on that, and there is no other side of the story. There is no other side. The only side is that
there
yes,
is no other side,
we
Mr. Ashok Pandit,
Kashmiri
there is
Pandits
no other
started
side.
suffering from
We accept it.
1985.
We accept and we want that, but then you tell me that you
1985. One
mentioned
sec, let me finish.
It was
Let
the
me
same
finish,
Bharatiya
Mr.
Janata
Chaudhary.
government
Mr. Chaudhary, don't disturb me.
allied with
Mr.
the
Chaudhary,
PDP,
don't disturb me.
various
Don't disturb me. Mr.
No,
Chaudhary,
you are-
Mr. Chaudhary,
you are
let the
hypocrisy
victim talk. Mr. Chaudhary, let the victim talk. Let the
Mr.
victim
Kamru Zaman
talk. Let the
Chaudhary,
victim
Mr.
talk.
Kamru Zaman
Mr.
Chaudhary,
Mr. Chaudhary,
you know,
let
32
the
years
victim talk.
later, if
Allow
they
me to
haven't
talk.
got justice,
Allow me to talk.
don't take their
Don't
voice
disturb
away.
me. Allow me to talk.
Allow
Allow
them
me
to
to talk.
express
Come on, I
themselves
know,
today.
Ashok
Allow me to talk.
At least that much sensitivity we must have to
Allow me to
allow
talk.
them to speak.
I'm Mr. Navika, I'm fed up with the reasons given. Every Kashmiri Hindu is fed up with the reasons given by this communists, this Congress, and these political parties that no, this didn't happen to you, that happened to you. I know what has happened to me. I don't need anybody's certificate as to what has happened to me. Farooq Abdullah orchestrated my exodus and genocide. He was a part and parcel of the entire strategy of my removal. And then on 19th January this happened. He fled to London before that, proving that he's not involved in it. When we were on fire, when we were burnt, Farooq Abdullah was whiling away his time in London, which is shown in the film. So there is nothing lie in it. 1985 onwards, our selective killings happened. Tiklal Taplu was killed, is there in the film. Farooq Abdullah ran away, it was there in the film. He moved around all the heroines on the motorcycle, is there in the film. Satish Ganju was killed, it's there in the film. Lassa Kaul was killed, it is there in the film. Premnath Bhatt was killed, it is there in the film. Every bit of what happened to Kashmiri Pandits is there in the film. I don't need anybody's certificate to tell me that what happened to Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir. We have suffered the worst genocide. We have suffered the worst ethnic cleansing, and I applaud Vivek Agnihotri for bringing up and exposing these faces who were with masks, these people who kept quiet, who buried our pain, who buried our cries, our weeps under the carpet. Nobody heard us. Nobody listened to us. Nobody thought of us. And now they're giving us sermons. I thank Narendra Modi for giving us power today in the parliament. I applaud him to tell us that truth will prevail in this country, and anybody who's anti-national will be in trouble in this country. Who went to meet those people in JNU, those Kashmiris who were shouting slogans, ki Bharat tere tukde honge? It is Rahul Gandhi who went and met them. It is Sitaram Yechuri who went
now
and met
you are
them.
from a Kashmiri Pandit, you are becoming a political
that
statement.
the person who killed us, the person who raped
Now,
us,
if you want to be decide first if you want to be a
the
victim
person who raped us is
or you want to
meeting,
be a
is meeting.
political statement
Just keep
making
your
out
mouth.
here in national
Just keep
television.
quiet. Just keep quiet. Don't disturb me. Don't disturb me. It is nothing
Why
to
are
do
you
with politics.
shouting, sir?
I
We
am
can
a
listen
victim
to
of
you
terrorism,
fully.
and terrorism supported by people like you. People like you. Because
You are
this
making your
shouting is
hypocrisy
because
is getting
I'm
कमरू
not-
जमान चौधरी, कमरू जमान चौधरी, कोई तो बात होगी जो आप हर बार उंगली उठाते हैं और जगमोहन गवर्नर की तरफ घुमाते हैं. कोई तो बात होगी कि आप 1988 की गवर्नर साहब की चिट्ठियों की बयान नहीं करते जो उन्होंने राजीव गांधी को लिखी थी. कोई तो बात होगी, कोई तो सच होगा जिसको आप छुपाते हैं. जब आप 1990 में जगमोहन की बात करते हैं, बीजेपी की बात करते हैं, पर ये नहीं बताते that 1984 to 89 there was a government in the center which belonged to Rajiv Gandhi, and there was a government in Kashmir that belonged to Farooq Abdullah, and that there was an alliance between the two, which is why this was happening. And Shehzad Poonawala, I want to ask you, why do they only raise the question of 8 years, nothing has happened. Kashmiri Pandits have not returned. Though it is a question. But the fact is, why don't they talk about the 24 years before that? Why don't they talk about the fact that affidavits were not produced? Why don't they talk about the fact that FIRs were not registered? Why don't they talk about the fact that women were raped and killed in front of their own children? I want to ask, why is this not a topic of conversation? Is everything only about politics?
Navika, 32 years ago, in India, the biggest crime against humanity was committed. And for the last 32 years, what we have seen is the burial of the complete truth of that war against or crime against humanity that has been done. And those today who come out and say it's 8 versus 24, those who come out and say that yes, but also Kashmiri Muslims died. Yes, Germans also died due to Hitler, but does that mean that you would go and tell a Holocaust victim that look, but even Germans died because of Hitler and therefore your pain is not worthy of being remembered and commemorated? Today, I am disgusted at this display where Ashok Pandit is being asked to show his wounds to the world. And this is exactly what has happened to the Kashmiri Hindu community for the last 32 years. Instead of the idea of justice, and the idea of justice is not standing in neutrality between two sides. It is standing with the right side, upholding that side and calling out the wrong instead of calling out what was wrong. And let us be very clear, what happened 32 years ago under the watch of the Congress government and under Farooq Abdullah was the assault and murder and genocide of Kashmiri Hindus because they were Hindus, and it was done by those who believe and espouse in the cause of Islamism, and it was supported and given patronage by political forces that wanted to benefit out of that entire Islamist movement. So let us not call it by any other name, or let us not demean the victimhood of the Kashmiri Hindu community by saying that also Muslims died. Of course Muslims died. Everybody who had the idea of India in their heart died. But the assault was not on them. The assault was on the Kashmiri Hindu community. And let me tell you what are the various instances. The Kerala Congress coming out and whitewashing it is hardly one of the instances of trying to deny even the sense of victimhood that was left to people like Ashok Pandit. This is the same Congress party which has gone ahead and said that these people, the Kashmiri Hindus, there was no internal displacement of them, but they were actually migrating out of their own volition. This is the Congress party which has termed it as an exodus and not as a genocide. This Congress party has been so shameless that it has denied, forget 8 versus 24, it has not even allowed a sense of victimhood that the victims of Kashmiri Hindu genocide should be allowed with. This is the level to which the Congress party and its ilk and its ecosystem have fallen. I would say today that Vivek Agnihotri has not made a movie. This is a moment of awakening and a movement of justice that was denied for far too long. If I legitimize Kamruzaman Chaudhary or his party's assertions by even justifying what happened in 8 years versus 24 years, I would be doing bigger disservice to the likes of Ashok Pandit. All I can tell Ashok Pandit is that he is a victim of the worst crime of humanity, and if there is any shame or morality left, we should call, just like there was Nuremberg trials, just like there was Milosevic who was tried for crimes against humanity, those people who are at the helm of affairs or who denied or enabled this Holocaust against the Kashmiri Hindu community, they should be tried for war crimes.
Sumansi Raman, I want to ask you, why are we so scared to face the truth? Why are we discrediting the film? Because it's not about the film. Did Kashmiri Pandits leave Kashmir in the face of militancy which was turned a blind eye to? And that is where we are coming from. Who is guilty of turning a blind eye to the militancy, to the terrorism that was happening in Kashmir, which led to this ethnic cleansing, to this exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits? 32 years later, do you think it's time to look at that reality?
Yeah, Navika, first of all, there are 2 or 3 key points that I want to make. And one is the rather obvious point that at the height of the exodus in 1989, it was not a Congress government which was in power at the center, to the best of my knowledge. And I think that it should be appreciated.
It was a genocide. Stop calling it an exodus.
During the genocide, okay, during the genocide, which government was in power? Who were propping them
This
up?
is the
I think-
whitewashing. This terminology
No, no,
to
Shehzad,
downplay and underplay
who
the
was-
sense
who
of...
was, one second.
Why would you
Let me
talk about
finish.
Jagmohan and not
Can I-
Farooq
can I
Abdullah?
finish my
Why
point?
would you
Can
talk
I
about the
finish
fact
my-
that on 19 January, Jagmohan was not even in Kashmir? Why won't you talk about the fact that the warning signals, as Jagmohan called it, had been
I brought-
started
one
in
second.
1988?
I brought up that point purely because Mr. Shehzad said specifically that Nuremberg-like trials must be conducted to hold those guilty to book. And I'm absolutely all for it. Whoever was in power in that period of time, 1989 in Delhi, and whoever was exercising control over Kashmir, almost surely there is no harm in bringing them to justice, even though it is 30 years beyond. Now, the point is that is not sort of palatable because, it was not the Congress party which was in power at that time, but never mind. Now, let's come to the second part. The second part is, I think in many ways, the Kashmir files is going to raise the question of why in the last 8 years, nothing has been done to rehabilitate these traumatized victims of what was in effect a genocide. I will agree with Shehzad and will agree with Mr. Pandit. What has been done to rehabilitate them except milking their trauma for political propaganda? What has been done to resettle them? Please ask Mr. Anand Ranganathan to tell me.
Okay, Ashok
what
Pandit,
all has-
Ashok
what
Pandit,
measures have been
Ashok
done
Pandit,
in the last
is
8
your
years?
trauma being milked in the last 8 years, and did you get justice
No,
in the
please tell me
24
the
years
measures.
before that? No, you've raised the
Tell me
question,
what
now
has been
Ashok
done.
Pandit will answer that question.
Ask Mr.
No,
Ranganathan to
hold
answer.
your thoughts, hold your speech. Only Ashok Pandit can answer that because he's gone through the trauma. So the floor is his. Ashok Pandit, respond to Suman Siraman.
Raman Saab, I respect you as one of the intellectuals of this country. So I would like to tell you and I would like to brief you on this, that my exodus and my genocide and my ethnic cleansing was not planned in one day. It was planned in 10 years. Okay? So let us be very clear on that. It was not on one day. And Jagmohan was in Jammu, in Delhi. He came to Kashmir on 20th, not on 19th. Firstly, so the seriousness of my exodus and genocide and ethnic cleansing should be understood by you, that the planning was planned between Congress, National Conference, PDP and then Hurriyat Conference together. So you have to understand the seriousness of the planning of my exodus and my genocide. So don't get into the frenzy business कि the government ये थी, सरकार वो थी. सरकार उस वक्त जब प्लानिंग हुई है मेरी, वही कांग्रेस थी, पीडीपी थी, नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस थी और हुर्रियत कॉन्फ्रेंस ने सब साथ में मिला के इन्होंने खिचड़ी पकाई है हमारे खिलाफ. ठीक है. दूसरी बात आप जो कह रहे हैं कि 8 साल में क्या हुआ, 8 साल में क्या हुआ. अरे रमन साहब, 70 साल का मलबा, 70 साल जो कांग्रेस ने, पीडीपी ने, नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस ने इतने पिछले 40-50 साल में जो वहां पर टेररिज्म को पाला, पनपाया, पैदा किया, खिलाया, पिलाया, रोज 10-10 मारे जा रहे हैं. तो सफाई करने में टाइम तो मिलेगा ना. 35-40 साल का. सुनिए, अरे पंडित्स आर नॉट कैटल that they'll put them in truck and take them to Kashmir. The situation has to be cleaned. The terrorists have to be killed.
Why
They are not
hasn't it been
cattle.
cleaned?
चलो ट्रक में बैठो, हम आपको लेके चलते हैं कश्मीर, हम आपको रिहैबिलिटेट. अरे हो रहा है ना, आप देखते नहीं हो, आप टेलीविजन न्यूज नहीं देखते हो, आप देखते नहीं हो. 370 हटाया, हमको जेल से छोड़ा उन्होंने. 35 हटाया, था दम में, कांग्रेस में दम था, किसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी में दम था. There is a hope. This government has created hope in Kashmiri Hindus for return. This government has given us confidence. Go to Kashmir now. Go to Jammu now.
Majid Haidri Saab, I want to ask you, Javed Beg of the People's Democratic Front has tweeted today a picture of a Kashmiri Hindu girl and how she was killed. And just a short while ago, on Times Now Navbharat, he just said this, that हमसे गलती हुई कश्मीरी मुस्लिम से, हमारे पेरेंट्स के उन पुश्तों ने गलतियां की हैं. I want to ask you tonight, Majid Haidari साहब, क्या ये acceptance है? Nobody is making this a communal issue. People can go astray in any community, in any religion. But at least admission of the fact that there was Islamist terrorism, there was a deliberate attempt to target the Kashmiri Hindus. Can that admission at least come 32 years later?
Navika Sahiba, before responding your question and making my candid confession over this issue, I would like to dedicate this couplet to the movie Kashmir Files and to the support of our BJP government towards this movie and the cause of Kashmiri Pandits. Badi der kardi meherban aate aage. Navika Sahiba, the pain of Kashmiri Pandits is as pure as waters of Gangotri. The pain of Kashmiri Pandits is as sacred as the waters of Gangotri. And Kashmir is incomplete without Kashmiri Pandits, much the way a Muslim woman is incomplete without hijab. But the point here is that because of the two traitors of Congress who were at the helm that time, who had backstabbed Rajiv Gandhi, Kashmiri Pandits had to bear with the situation. I'm not blaming those two traitors alone, but they too have their role in this. Now the point is that how to come to a point of reconciliation. The reconciliation where we get back our Kashmiri Pandits back to their homeland. And that is for the BJP to decide and not to support this movie, because if you support this movie, then tomorrow the Sikhs will say, hey Vivek bhai, meri picture dikha do, 84 ke dando ki picture dikha do Vivek bhai. The women will say, Vivek bhai, hijab files dikha do, Babri Masjid ki movie dikha do. There will be a shout from every side. There will be a shout.
किसने मना किया है? बनाइए ना, किसने मना किया है? किसने मना किया है?
मूवी दिखा दो. अरे कोई तो बेगुनाह आर्यन खान पे बायोपिक दिखा दो. There will be a shout from all sides, and we won't be into reconciliation. We will be at daggers drawn with each other.
Okay, so you are saying that this freedom of expression should not be allowed till other freedoms of expression are allowed. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, we are back to square one. इसको मत दिखाइए. अब मामला जो है दूसरी बातों का शुरू कर दीजिए.
Navika, you must.
Anand bhai, Babri Masjid files दिखा दो. Anand bhai, ए भाई, दिखा दो जरा Babri Masjid files दिखा दो. Anand bhai, मुझे दिखा दो पीलू खान पे बायोपिक दिखा दो. Anand bhai, मुझे भी दिखा दो. मैं भी फसाद करना चाहता हूँ.
ना आनंद भाई ने ये वाली फिल्म बनाई है, ना बाबरी मस्जिद की बनाएंगे. आपको बनानी है, बनाइए. किसने मना किया आपको? But Anand Ranganathan respond.
Navika, can you please mute him? Because this is a very serious topic. Let not some clown get some time, and that to my time, eat into my time, to display his rank ignorance and stupidity. I request.
No, this is not.
So I will be quiet.
1 minute, Majid Haidari. I'll have to lower your fader. Dr. Anand Ranganathan is making a point, and I'm running out of time. Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
Yes, I want to make 2 points. One for the erudite Mr. Chaudhary, rebut him, and the other, the question was asked directly to me by Dr. Raman, so I must answer that. 2 very serious points I want to make. Number 1, and here, if I may, Navika, may I gently also castigate you when you say we should not make this situation communal. You must realize that the exodus and the genocide of the Kashmiri Pandits was entirely communal, bigoted, based on religious fanaticism. You must read Our Moon Has Blood Clots by Rahul Pandita. You must watch the documentary by one of your panelists here, Ashok Pandit, The World Has Forgotten Us. It will be amply clear that chants from the mosques on that night, fateful night of 19 Jan 1990 said, Kashmiri Pandit men, you leave your women here, convert or die. It was totally bigoted, communal, fanatic attack. That is the truth. It was based on religion. Politics came later. And as proof, let me quote directly from one of the instigators, Gilani. Let me give you a glimpse into his world, a world of hatred for India and Hindus. And these are taken directly from his book, Nawai Hurriyat. I am quoting him verbatim. Number 1, Muslims are a qawm wholly separate from the Hindus. Muslims are a complete separate nation on the basis of their religion, culture, civilization, customs and practices, and thought. The nationalism and foundation of their unity cannot be based on their homeland, race, language, color, or economic system. The basis of their unity is Islam and Islam alone. Another quote, Kashmir must become an Islamic state. Our goal is the establishment of the Islamic government. Our struggle is for the sake of Islam. Another quote, Islam removes people from the slavery of people, but secularism makes the people slaves of Delhi. Another one, I plead with the Afghan Mujahideen to come forward to help liberate us from India. I can give you so many quotes verbatim. So please do not call it a non-religious thing. It was an exodus, it was a genocide based on religion and religion alone. Now point number 2. Mr. Suman, Dr. Suman Raman, you are absolutely correct. But had you been revisiting what I've been saying for 5 years, you would have realized that I'm the first one to criticize this government, that they've been sitting idle for 8 years and they have not done anything. In fact, yesterday I tweeted, only 520 Kashmiri Hindus have been made to return home after Article 370 was abrogated. Well, if I was the Prime Minister, I would have made sure that was my first aim, to rehabilitate all 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus as soon as possible.
And our job will not be done till each and every last Kashmiri Hindu comes back to Kashmir. That is a promise we as a nation should make to ourselves. Not just expect governments to do this for us. It has to be our voice, our support that goes out to our brothers and sisters to make their return possible. But I want to leave this debate with one question. And the question is, who were these Gilanis? Who were these Hurriyat Conference people? These were the people who had just so much clout in Delhi. No solution for Kashmir was possible without them being part of the discussion, the debate. And pictures that we will never forget of Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh with people of JKLF, and that is a sight this country has seen. Terrorists getting priority over our own brothers and sisters who had been forced to leave their motherland. And why was this happening? Who's going to answer it? A film that touches a raw nerve is now the biggest enemy of the truth? Is that what some quarters want?